let's take a look at the new cards from M21 to try to upgrade some commander decks. What's up, Commander players? My name's Matt and you're watching Top Commander. So on my last video that I did, I talked about the legendary creatures that we got coming from M21, and today I'm going to be talking about the other rares and mythics and a couple of uncommons that we might also want to consider for some commander decks. Maybe some new commander decks, maybe some upgrades. We'll have to see what happens. But before I get into that, if you wish to support this channel, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you wish to support this channel directly, be sure to visit patreon.com/topcommander. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into it. So, quick disclaimer, there's 52 cards. This is not including any of the reprints. I realized in my last video I talked about one of the reprints, which was a legendary creature of Azusa. But in this video, I'm just going to do strictly what the new rares and mythics are, and a couple of the uncommons. And I'm actually going to be doing a separate video for the remakes from M21 as more of a shout out for the remakes and see what kind of value we got from there. So, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, I am going to be doing these pretty quickly because there's 52 cards and I don't want the video to be 2 or 3 hours long. So, try to go in rapid succession. I will read through them and then I'm just going to give a quick how I feel about this card. Alright, so I'm going to start off with the Planeswalkers. The first one being Basri Ket. He is a Planeswalker Basri, 1 generic and double white for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker, +1. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. It gains indestructible until end of turn. -2. Whenever 1 or more non-token creatures attack this turn, create that many 1/1 white soldier creature tokens that are tapped and attacking. -6. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, then put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So this actually seems pretty good, especially if you're in +1/+1 counters deck, a token deck of course, if you get the ult off. It's kind of cool that it produces a token and Cathar's Crusades at the same time. So I like this. It's not on the level of like Ugin or Elspeth that we know of in Commander, but in the right deck I feel like it could shine. So the next one, Teferi, Master of Time. 2 generic and 2 blue for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. Has a static ability. You may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi, Master of Time, on any player's turn, anytime you can cast an instant. +1, draw a card and discard a card, so a looter. -3, target creature you don't control phases out. That's fun. -10, take 2 extra turns after this one, so a time stretch. Now the way that that static ability reads is you play Teferi, +1 him, pass to your opponent, you can +1 him, they pass, you can +1 them. You get to do this every rotation. As long as you have the loyalty counters on it, you can use any of his loyalty abilities basically on everybody's turn, according to what I've heard. They're probably going to rat that or ban it in Commander because that seems a little too good. So, but is it a good card? Yes, gets a thumbs up. Next one, Liliana, Waker of the Dead. 2 generic and 2 black for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. +1. Each player discards a card. Each opponent who can't loses 3 life. -3. Target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. -7. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. That's a little nutty. Obviously you have to be in a deck that cares about graveyard recursion or a mill deck of some sort, or just a deck that doesn't really care if you have cards in your hand, because the +1 also means you discard. So something like a Muldrotha deck or Carador, something like that obviously will want this particular Planeswalker, and even at that, it's not the best. There are better options, but still pretty good. Next one, Chandra, Heart of Fire. 3 generic and 2 red for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. +1, discard your hand, then exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until end of turn, you may play cards exiled this way. +1, Chandra, Heart of Fire deals 2 damage to any target. -9, search your graveyard and library for any number of red, instant, and or sorcery cards. Exile them, then shuffle your library. You may cast them this turn. Add 6 red. We've had better Chandras in my opinion. I'm not too big on the +1s on either +1 actually. But I can see this being used in some casual decks. So, not the worst, but definitely not the best by any stretch. Next one, Garruk Unleashed. 2 generic and 2 green for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. +1, up to 1 target creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. -2, create a 3/3 green beast creature token. Then, if an opponent controls more creatures than you, put a loyalty counter on Garruk Unleashed. -7, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, you may search your library for a creature card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So that's a nutty effect. So at the end step, you just get to planar bridge something out onto the field. Now it's creature specifically, but if you're in a big creature deck, mono green, big green creatures, if you could get the ult off, this can be a little nutty. That emblem seems a bit much. And it's a -7, it comes in with 4, so if you have doubling seasoning, it comes in with 8, you can ultimate immediately. So, yeah, that's a card, for sure. Alright, next up we have the new shrines, which everybody's been talking about. Sanctum of Tranquil Light, 1 white for a legendary enchantment shrine. 5 generic and a white, tap target creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each shrine you control. Probably the weaker of the 6 that we have in this set. But the fact that it does reduce the cost of it, pretty good. When it comes out by itself, it's 4 generic and a white, because it does count itself. I'm not too big on this one particularly. Sanctum of Calm Waters is the next one. 3 generic and a blue, legendary enchantment shrine. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you may draw X cards, where X is the number of shrines you control. If you do, discard a card. So it by itself is a looter for 4 mana every turn. It's not terrible, but if you have multiple shrines out, which you can do, because if you're running all 5 and you get the white one out first, then you get this one out, now you're drawing 2 and discarding 1. So again, not the worst. Probably one of the better ones actually, besides maybe the black one, which is Sanctum of Stone Fangs, 1 generic and a black. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of shrines you control. This I feel like would be one of the win cons in the shrine deck. Next one, it's going to be the red one, Sanctum of Shattered Heights, 2 generic and a red. Pay 1 mana, discard a land or a shrine. Sanctum of Shattered Heights deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of shrines you control. Being that there's only 11 shrines now in total, if you wanted to do a shrine deck, you're probably not discarding shrines. You're probably going to end up discarding lands for this effect, because you want your shrines to hit the field so you can get the triggers. Because there are so few. Now, if they print more later on down the road, this definitely could be useful in discarding certain shrines. Maybe, depending on what they come out with. But it took them for this long to do more shrines, because the originals came out in Kamigawa. Next one, Sanctum of Fruitful Harvest, 2 generic and a green. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of shrines you control. So the green shrine just ramps you. That seems pretty good. That's what most of these will... That's the one that this deck really needs for the shrines, because some of them do cost a good bit of mana, especially the older ones. But the granddaddy of them all, apparently, the sanctum of all, costs Wooburg. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library and or graveyard for a shrine card and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. If an ability of another shrine you control triggers while you control 6 or more shrines, that ability triggers an additional time. So it doubles all of your triggers on your shrines if you control 6 or more. Of course, it counts itself. So this is probably the one that will make the deck work. If you go to tutor up for an enchantment in a 5-color shrine deck, this is probably the first one you're going after. If not, maybe the green one. But you're wanting this one out as soon as possible to tutor up the other ones every turn, and then your upkeep, your triggers happen twice, so it even triggers this one twice, right? Yes. Oh, of another shrine. Never mind. So it only counts the other shrines. But in a way, you could think of it as the Sanctum of all of a sudden becomes all of the shrines in one. So you get twice as many triggers off of them. But that's just an interesting way to look at it. Alright, next we're going to get into the white cards, of course. Angelic Ascension is one of the uncommons that I wanted to talk about. 1 generic and a white for an instant. Exile target creature or planeswalker. Its controller creates a 4/4 white angel token with flying. Now, this is pretty good. I like it. I'm not huge on giving them a 4/4, but considering the fact that it can get rid of a planeswalker, like that problematic Teferi that we're probably going to see a lot of, I like this card. I would rather deal with a 4/4 token than a Teferi any day, because that Teferi is out of control. So, next up, Basri's Lieutenant. 3 generic and a white for a 3/4 creature human knight, vigilance, protection from multicolored. When Basri's Lieutenant enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever Basri's Lieutenant or another creature you control dies, if it had a +1/+1 counter on it, you create a 2/2 white knight with vigilance. So of course this is going to be in like Gave or maybe Cathril, the new one. Anything that deals with counters. If you care about counters and you care about tokens, this is the card that needs to go in. Next one, Containment Priest. 1 generic and a white for a 2/2 creature human cleric with flash. If a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. This is, okay, so this is a stacks level piece in white again. I like this because it's good for stopping people from cheating cards into play. So yeah, there's really nothing wrong with this. It's not too terribly taxing, I guess, unless your deck is all about cheating stuff into play. But if that's the case, then you need to add more ramp and try to hard cast some stuff after a while, especially with this on the field, because it's just going to get exiled. And the fact that it has flash means it can come out of nowhere. But on to the next one. Idol of Endurance is an artifact for 2 generic and a white. When Idol of Endurance enters the battlefield, exile all creature cards with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard until it leaves the battlefield. 1 generic and a white and tap it until end of turn. You may cast a creature spell from among the cards exiled without paying its mana cost. Now, you have to have a certain number of creatures with CMC 3 or less. Any kind of white weenie deck that just has a bunch of small cast cost creatures. Another one that I thought of, which I could be wrong in thinking like this, but Alesha Who Smiles at Death would not be a bad idea, because Alesha already cares about creatures with power 2 or less. And a lot of those creatures are 3 cast cost or less. So I would say maybe an Alesha deck would use this. I'm not sure if it's correct in that thinking. Maybe somebody can let me know down in the comments below. But on to the next one. Pack Leader. 1 generic and a white for a 2/2 creature dog. Yes, we have dogs finally, which is really cool because I can't believe we didn't have dogs before this set. Other dogs you control get +1/+1 whenever pack leader attacks prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn to dogs you control. So this definitely is going to be in dog travel. Side note as well, dogs is a new keyword, but they're also made a rules change. They errated any creatures that had the text of hounds to dogs. So there are a few more dogs than people are thinking at this point. We don't have just the ones from M21. Everything prior to this, hounds is gone, dogs are in. So, just so anybody that didn't know about that one. Next card, Speaker of the Heavens. 1 white for a 1/1 creature human cleric with vigilance and lifelink. It's already sounding pretty good. Not particularly for commander, but tap it, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. Activate this ability only if you have at least 7 life more than your starting life total, and only anytime you can cast a sorcery. So this definitely sounds like Dragon Master Outcast. You have to be on a life gain deck, obviously, but spits out 4/4s for free for 1 mana. Not a bad deal, actually, because there's plenty of life gain decks that can do this. But, on to the next card. We are entering the blue cards. Discontinuity. 3 blue, blue, blue for an instant. As long as it's your turn, this spell costs 2 blue, blue less to cast. So it's 1 generic and a blue. So it's 2 mana on your turn if you cast it. And it just says end the turn. There's other cards. There's decks that use Sundial of the Infinite. I guess this could go in a deck like that if you're in blue. I'm not too big on strategies that rely on just ending my turn out of nowhere like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I see the usage of these cards, but that's just not the kind of cards that I play with, but I'm pretty sure somebody out there is going to use it. Next up, Ghostly Pilferer. 1 generic and a blue for a 2/1 creature spirit rogue. Whenever Ghostly Pilferer becomes untapped, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. Discard a card. Ghostly Pilferer can't be blocked this turn. So this is kind of a cute draw engine for blue. The first thing that I immediately thought of, honestly, was Tetsuko Umezawa's Fugitive, because it cares about small powered creatures and gives them unblockable anyways. So Ghostly Pilferer would probably go in something like that as just an extra draw engine. Next up, we have Pursued Whale. 5 generic and 2 blue for an 8/8 creature whale. When Pursued Whale enters the battlefield, each opponent creates a 1/1 red pirate creature token with this creature can't be blocked, and creatures you control attack each combat if able. Oh, it can't block. Okay, so it basically forces you to swing with this, with your creatures all the time. Spells your opponents cast that target Pursued Whale cost 3 more to cast. Okay, so the only deck that I really see this is like somebody doing like Whale Tribal, or the mono blue like whales, krakens, leviathans, and octopuses. That's really about all I see for that particular card. Next card, See the Truth. One generic and a blue for a sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of those into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So it's a sorcery speed Anticipate. Except, if this spell was cast from anywhere other than your hand, put each of those cards in your hand instead. So it can potentially draw 3. This is, of course, depending on how your deck runs. You have to cast it from somewhere other than your hand. So if you can cast it from the top of your deck with, like, I forget his name, it's like Melik something, where he can let you cast stuff off the top of your deck. Or Alesha, not Alesha, Elsha of the Infinite, where you can cast stuff from the top of your library. Or if you're running stuff like Future Sight, sure, this is a 2 mana draw 3. Next up, Shacklegeist. 1 generic and a blue for a 2/2 creature spirit, has flying, can block only creatures with flying. You can tap 2 untapped spirits you control, tap target creature you don't control. So, about the only thing this is going in really is something with spirit tribal, or just has a lot of spirits in it that's in the colors. Not too exciting. But this next one, on the other hand, I do recommend people looking at it a lot more, because a lot of people run Archaeomancer, and Archaeomancer is a really, really good card to get your instants of sorceries back on a body, especially if you're running like Brago, Amanatu, Rune, Chulane, anything like that. So this is a new one that you might want to check out. Shipwreck Dowser. 3 generic and 2 blue for a 3/3 creature merfolk wizard. Enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery from your grave to your hand. So there's the Archaeomancer part. And it also has prowess. So 1 mana more than Archaeomancer and you get a creature with prowess. You are already fetching back instants and sorcery, so if you have a little bit of heavy non-creature action going on, you can do some damage with this thing. Alright, on to the next one. Stormwing Entity. 3 generic and 2 blue for a 3/3 creature elemental. This spell costs 2 generic and a blue, less to cast if you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, has flying, has prowess, and whenever Stormwing Entity enters the battlefield, scry 2. So if you cast an instant or sorcery, this spell costs 2 mana. It's 1 generic and a blue. So 2 mana for a 3/3 flying, prowess, ETB, scry 2. Seems pretty good, especially if you could get it to cast for the 2 and then just use Amanatu, Brago, something like that to just blink it and get the multiple scries out of it. It's a bit of a workaround, but I can see people using this. Next up, Sublime Epiphany. 4 generic and 2 blue for an instant. Choose 1 or more counter target spell. Counter target activated or triggered ability. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. Target player draws a card. Is Mystic Confluence good? Is Cryptic Command good? That's a rhetorical question. Yes, this is a good card. I recommend this. I don't care that it's 1 mana more. This gives you a lot of options. And especially in Instance of Sorcery's Matter deck, this can just win the game out of nowhere if you have the right setup. So, yeah, there's no reason, even if you don't take advantage of that, there's no reason not to run this. Next up, Teferi's Ageless Insight. 2 generic and 2 blue for a legendary enchantment. If you would draw a card, except the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. Yeah, that's doing a lot of work, so I don't see a reason why not to run that, especially if you're in blue. Blue already draws a lot of cards, but this does a little bit better. So, yeah, absolutely. The uncommon for blue that I wanted to look at was Teferi's Tutelage. 2 generic and a blue for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, then discard a card. Whenever you draw a card, target opponent mills 2 cards. The fact that they made mill an official keyword now is just great. But, yeah, so this is Sphinx's Tutelage, Psychic Surgery. There's a couple of cards that do this, so now that we have another card to do that, so I think mill decks might actually might be getting enough cards to actually pull that off. That strategy might actually be a thing, which is kind of weird to think about now. But, on to the next one. We're moving on to the black cards now. Archfiend's Vessel is the uncommon that I wanted to look at. 1 black for a 1/1 creature human cleric with lifelink. When Archfiend's Vessel enters the battlefield, if it entered from your graveyard, or you cast it from your graveyard, exile it. If you do, create a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying. The reason why I like this is if you, reanimate it, you're only paying 1 life and 1 black for a 5/5 flying demon. Never mind that it's just a 1 mana 1/1 life linker. If it's in the graveyard, which is where you want it to be, you just reanimate it and you get a 5/5 flying demon instead. That's value. For only 1 life, too. That's just great. Alright, next up, Demonic Embrace. 1 generic and 2 black for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+1, has flying, and is a demon in addition to its other types. You may cast Demonic Embrace from your graveyard by paying 3 life and discarding a card in addition to paying its other mana costs. So this is an enchantment aura that just, you can keep bringing it back from the graveyard even if the creature dies. It gives it a nice buff, +3/+1 in flying. I guess if you're in like some kind of a black deck that cares about enchantments or auras, buffing something up, maybe a Voltron style deck, sure, why not? Definitely more of a casual thing in my opinion. I don't see a lot of like higher level gameplay playing this, but definitely something to have fun with. Next up, Hooded Blight Fang. Wow, stutter much. 2 generic and a black for a 1/4 creature snake with Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. That's fun. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker. So Death Touch automatically kills planeswalkers now. That's actually pretty funny. There's been a lot of support for like Death Touch and Menace Tribal, so if you're in a deck that does have a lot of Death Touch, this would be the deck. This would be a card for that deck, and it seems kind of fun. It's pretty neat, and it's a snake, so why not, right? Alright, next up, Liliana's Standard Bearer. 2 generic and a black for a 3/1 creature zombie knight. Has flash. Okay. Yeah, I'm confused now. I've never seen a zombie with flash that I could think of. When Liliana's Standard Bearer enters the battlefield, draw X cards, where X is the number of creatures that died under your control this turn. I still don't see why this has to have flash. I mean, I guess unless somebody board wipes you, and you have mana held up, you can just flash them in, draw the cards. I mean, sure, I guess. I mean, still seems good, but the flash is throwing me way off. But yeah, definitely, good card. Next up, Necromentia. 1 generic and 2 black for a sorcery. Choose a card name other than a basic land card name. Search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name and exile them. That player shuffles their library, then creates a 2/2 black zombie creature token for each card exiled from their hand this way. Okay, so in all fairness, this does not really do a whole lot. Now, however, a card effect like this, if you know what your opponent's running and you know that they're playing a combo deck and you know a couple of their key combo pieces, I am the kind of player that I'm not afraid to run a couple of cards like this in a certain deck to stop them from comboing off and taking their combos out. And the fact that this is another one of those that it hits all cards named the same thing. Commander, we're in a singleton format, but there are a couple of cards. You know, Persistent Petitioners, Shadowborn Apostle, there's the Relentless Rats, and there's another rat that does the same thing. I mean, yeah, sure, taking them all away and exiling them and then giving them 2/2s like that. Probably not a good idea unless you have a backup board wipe for that, but, you know, if you do hit them with this, it's only 3 mana, and they're only 2/2 zombies. So if you can hit them, they get like 20, 30 zombies, cool, and then you play Toxic Deluge, pay 2 life, and their whole board is wiped. And there goes their entire deck. Seems a little bit mean, but I wouldn't doubt somebody would do this to a deck like that. Serves them right. Don't do that. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Next up, Peer into the Abyss. 4 generic is 4 generic, black, black, black. So 3 black and 4 generic, so it's 7 mana for a sorcery. This better do something good. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. Round up each time. Not to mention, this has the creepiest artwork I've seen in a while. But, yeah, I mean, if you could double this up somehow, like, just kind of copy it and just double the effect on them, they just draw their entire deck, and then they lose. Or, depending on how early you can get this cast, you can probably kill somebody, because if they draw, like, 30, 40 cards, then they lose that much life. Oh no, they lose half of their life. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can still... There's ways you can abuse this, but it's more of a cute thing to do. I would consider this more of a in-game challenge to try and pull that off. But on to the next one. Thieves Guild Enforcer, 1 black for a 1/1 creature human rogue with flash. Whenever the Thieves Guild Enforcer or another rogue enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent mills 2 cards. As long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, Thieves Guild Enforcer gets +2/+1 and has Death Touch. So if they have enough cards in their graveyard, it becomes a 3/2 with Death Touch. But if you're running Rogue Tribal, you can have a mill strategy involved and mill each opponent for 2 cards at the same time. So, I mean, it's kind of a build around, kind of a play around. Rogue Tribal, I guess, more fun. That's all I got for that. Next card, Brash Taunter. 4 generic and a red for a 1/1 goblin. Has indestructible. Whenever Brash Taunter is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. 2 mana, 2 generic and a red, tap it, and it fights another target creature. So, this is actually not terrible. I've seen some shenanigans play around with stuff like Stuffy Doll. You kind of have to have a setup for this to really make it really shine, but I see people still using it because it's a big old goblin. Why not? Next up, Chandra's Incinerator, 5 generic and a red for a 6/6 elemental. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. It has trample. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. Guess what? You're always casting this for 1. If you do it right, you're paying 1 mana for a 6/6 trampler with a stupid crazy effect. So yeah, definitely a good card. Next up, Conspicuous Snoop. 2 red for a 2/2 creature goblin rogue. Hey, there's that rogue tribal. Maybe it's rogues and goblins. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may cast goblin spells from the top of your library. As long as the top card of your library is a goblin card, Conspicuous Snoop has all activated abilities of that card. Yeah, so this is definitely going in Goblin Tribal. It's basically Experimental Frenzy, but you get to cast the... Yeah, it goes in Goblins. We'll leave it at that. Next up, Double Vision. 3 generic and 2 red for an enchantment. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So we've had plenty of cards here lately that do the same exact thing. But yeah, it's good. It's good. We have enough of these. It's good. Next, Fiery Emancipation. 3 generic and 3 red for an enchantment. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage to that permanent or player instead. We've already had Nyx Bloom Ancient, which was the green version of tripling something. It tripled the amount of mana you can produce. Now we have a red enchantment that says triple all of your damage. I'm not okay with this personally. Is it a good card? Yes. Are people not going to like you when you play it? Probably. Just a heads up. But yeah, it's good. Next up, Terror of the Peaks. 3 generic and 2 red for a 5/4 creature dragon with flying. Spells your opponents cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast. I'm okay with this so far. This is actually kind of cool. It's kind of a Staxy effect in red. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. Okay, so it's... Oh, it's that one card. It's Warstorm Surge on a creature on a 5/4 flying body that semi-protects itself by making them pay life to target it. I'm okay with this. I love this card. This is great coming from red, so yes, absolutely. Next up, Transmogrify. 3 generic and a red for a sorcery. Exile target creature. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. That player puts that card onto the battlefield, then shuffles the rest into their library. Okay, so it's a red removal spell. It exiles a creature, but they have to keep revealing cards until they reveal a creature. I really just prefer the other red removal, Chaos Warp. It doesn't guarantee them anything. It doesn't guarantee them a creature. I'm not too keen on this, and it's a 4 mana removal spell that's a sorcery. Why not an instant? I'm not okay with this one, honestly. This is very meh, but at casual tables I can see somebody using it. If you're hard hit for removal, I guess there's better options for removal if you're in mono red anyways, so that's probably going to be a video for another time. Next up, Volcanic Salvo. 10 generic and 2 red, so it costs 12 mana. It better do something very, very good. It's a sorcery. Probably not, or maybe it is. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. Okay, cool, so you can cast this for 2 red. Volcanic Salvo deals 6 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. I mean, I guess if you're reducing the cost to 2 and you're making it a sorcery, but why is it only 6? And why is it only 2 targets? Why can't this hit players? I'm not okay with this. Okay, so this is the crap red rare that they do. Every set there's always a crap red rare. This is that. Alright. And I know somebody's probably going to comment and be like, oh, but that's good. You can do this and do that. And, you can do some crazy shenanigans. Okay, yeah, I understand. There's crazy shenanigans. That's also called Magical Christmas Land is what that's called. But I'm talking about cards that actually do something. But I digress. Moving on, we're going into green. Elder Gargaroth. 3 generic and 2 green for a creature beast. 6/6. It has Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. Does it need anything else? Let's find out. Whenever it attacks or blocks, choose one. Create a 3/3 green beast token. Gain 3 life. Draw a card. You either give this thing haste or flash it in and hope nobody has removal or counter spells, and yeah, but if you see somebody go to play this, hold that Swords to Plowshares. Give them the 4/4 flying token with Angelic Ascension instead. Do that. You don't want this sticking around. Not for that kind of advantage. Next up, Feline Sovereign. 2 generic and a green for a 2/3 creature cat. Other cats you control get +1/+1 and have protection from dogs. Why? Whenever one or more cats you control deal combat damage to a player, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment that player controls. This is a shoe-in for cat decks. It's a cat tribal card just all the way through. This is what cats want. This is a great cat card. Bottom line. Next up, Garruk's Harbinger. 1 generic and 2 green for a 4/3 creature beast. Has hexproof from black. Whenever Garruk's Harbinger deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may reveal a creature card or Garruk planeswalker card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, so 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to be running black. I mean, this is an okay card. I guess if you just really want that ability, sure. If you're in Garruk Tribal, absolutely, I guess. But yeah, it's okay. Next up, Garruk's Uprising. 2 generic and a green for an enchantment. Whenever Garruk's Uprising enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. So it's whenever the enchantment enters the battlefield. Okay. I wish that was kind of the other way around. Creatures you control have trample. Woo. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Okay, so this, I was thinking about it. Granted, it gives creatures you control have trample, but it's a 3 mana. This just goes in Gyriad Conclave Exile. I don't care what anybody says. It's 3 mana. Every time you create a token, you get to draw a card because all the tokens that it creates are 4/4 beast. On to the next one. Primal Might. X and a green for a sorcery. Target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn. Then it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. Okay, so yeah, you could just not put anything into it and it becomes a fight spell, or it's a massive pump spell, which you could choose. I like the versatility on that, actually. The fact that you can do 1 green and X equals 0 and still do the fight is pretty good. Or you can dump however much mana you want into it, make it massive, fight something, and potentially swing for a lot anyways. So that's actually pretty good. It's not bad. Next up, Spore Web Weaver. That's almost a tongue twister. 2 generic and a green for a 1/4 creature spider. Has reach and hexproof from blue. What's up with the hexproof from colors? That's interesting, actually. Whenever Spore Web Weaver is dealt damage, you gain 1 life and create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. This is just kind of okay, I guess, depending on what deck you're building. Other than that, it's not very fascinating. Alright, we're into the artifacts. Chromatic Ori. The legendary artifact costs 7 mana. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. Tap, add 5 diamond mana. Also, spend 5 and tap it to draw a card for each color among permanents you control. This is a very bad draw spell. And the only thing that I can think of that would want this is maybe Joda, maybe Morophon. The other one that I was thinking of is like Send Triplets, if you can cheat this into play, because Send Triplets lets you cast stuff from your opponent's hand, but the hard thing about that is you have to make sure that you have ways to produce mana of any color. So with Chromatic Ori, you can spend mana as though it were mana of any color. So that's about the best scenarios I could think of. And that's, of course, Magical Christmas Land, because you need to cheat this thing into play, for sure. It's 7 mana, you can be doing way better things. But if you're building the deck to cheat it into play, go for it. Next up, Maze Mind Tome. 2 mana for an artifact. Tap, put a page counter on Maze Mind, and scry 1. Pay 2 mana and tap it, put a page counter on it, and draw a card. When there are 4 or more page counters on Maze Mind Tome, exile it. If you do, you gain 4 life. There's way better cards to do this, and even those are not the best. But there's way better cards than this. I mean, unless you have a deck that can take advantage of this, sure. Amanatu, keep flickering it, get rid of the counters on it, and then like just tap it to scry 1. I guess. Next one, Spark Hunter Massacre, 3 mana for a 3/4 artifact creature Massacre. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. Protection from Planeswalkers. 1 mana, Spark Hunter deals 1 damage to target planeswalker. 3 mana, gains indestructible until end of turn. Okay, so I mean, if you're in a playgroup that has a lot of planeswalker action going on, or maybe you just need to blow up a Teferi, yeah, you got a place to sink your mana to kill it. I mean, other than that, it's not the best. It's kind of very eh. Alright, and the last card to talk about is Animal Sanctuary, the new land. Tap and add diamond mana, or pay 2 and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on target bird, cat, dog, goat, ox, or snake. Now remember that it's target, so I don't understand why it's not all or each. I mean, I guess there's plenty of cards that do that. You know, there's Gavany Township, there's... That's honestly not even that great. I mean, unless you have a Voltron deck that's following under any of these categories, but I don't know of anybody running a Voltron bird, cat, dog, goat, ox, or snake. I guess the Voltron cat could be a thing because you have a Rabo, but it's... I mean, it's not the best. I'm not too thrilled about that. That's not really that great of a land, honestly. But that's the last card, so I guess let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are you excited about this set? What cards are you looking forward to the most? What cards are you definitely going to be using? What cards have you kind of skeptical about using? Is there anything that you're just like, nah, I'm not worried about that? You know, let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. So far, I'm actually pretty pleased with the set all in all, especially with the reprints, which I will be coming out with a video for that here soon. Specifically talking about the reprint value that we have coming from M21. And then right after that, I'm going to be doing videos for the Jumpstart spoilers, because I finished those this week as well. So I'm playing catch up right now. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll be sure to see you guys next video.